Hey guys, tonight we are diving deep, like Mariana Trench deep, into a world of silent poetry and controlled chaos. We're talking about the tranquil art of Chinese calligraphy and its surprisingly complex, often hidden philosophies. You're about to embark on a journey that's less about quick communication and more about, well, everything else. It's an art form so profound, so intertwined with history and thought, that you probably won't survive this with your desire for instant gratification entirely unscathed. Consider it a detox for your attention span. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments below. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine, if you will, a time long before keyboards, before printing presses, even before readily available paper. Picture a world where the very act of making a mark, of transcribing a thought or an observation into a symbol, was a momentous, almost magical event. You're standing on the fertile plains of ancient China, perhaps near the Yellow River, the air thick with the scent of loess and the smoke of cooking fires. Here, the story of writing, and by extension calligraphy, begins not with a practical memo, but with whispers of gods and sages. Legend tells of a remarkable figure named Kang Ji, an official historian of the mythical Yellow Emperor. Now Kang Ji wasn't your average bureaucrat. He supposedly had 4 eyes, 2 in the usual spots and 2 more right above them. You can imagine that with 4 eyes, he probably saw a lot more than most, though one wonders if he needed specially prescribed ancient spectacles or just got really good at focusing. The story goes that Kang Ji, deeply troubled by the unreliability of knotted cords for record keeping, looked up at the patterns of the stars, down at the tracks of birds and beasts on the earth, and even studied the markings on the shells of turtles. From these natural forms, these intricate designs woven by the world itself, he is said to have conceived the first Chinese characters. It's a beautiful image, isn't it? Writing born not from human ego, but from a profound observation of nature. The legends even say that when these characters were first created, millet rained from the heavens, and ghosts wept in the night, fearing the power that humanity had just unlocked. A bit dramatic, perhaps, but it underscores the immense significance attributed to this new form of communication. These weren't just abstract symbols. They were seen as potent, imbued with the essence of the things they represented. To write the character for mountain was, in a way, to capture a sliver of the mountain spirit. This belief in the inherent power of written words would echo down through millennia, becoming a cornerstone of calligraphic philosophy. Now, let's move from the mists of legend to something you could, quite literally, hold in your hand. If you were an archaeologist, that is. We travel forward to the Shang dynasty, roughly from 1600 to 1046 BCE. This is where we find the earliest confirmed body of Chinese writing, the oracle bones. These are the mainstream historical fact for tonight. Picture this: a Shang king, anxious about an upcoming battle, a harvest, or even the queen's toothache, summons his diviners. These specialists would take a tortoise plastron, that's the flat underside of the shell, or an ox scapula, a shoulder blade, and meticulously carve questions onto its surface. The characters they used, known as jiaguwen, were sharp, angular, and strikingly pictographic. You can almost see the object in the symbol: a crescent for the moon, a circle with a dot for the sun, a stick figure for a person. Then came the heat. The diviner would apply a hot poker or burning brand to prepared hollows on the reverse side of the bone. You'd hear the sharp crack as the heat-stressed bone fractured, the scent of scorched bone filling the air of the ritual chamber. The patterns of these cracks were then interpreted by the king or the diviner as answers from the ancestors or deities. And often, the question, the interpretation, and sometimes even the eventual outcome were all inscribed right there on the bone. Imagine the scene: flickering torchlight, hushed anticipation, the weight of the kingdom hanging on these cryptic fissures. It's a long way from sending a text message to see if your friend is free for coffee. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. For centuries, these inscribed bones were periodically unearthed by farmers in places like Anyang, the ancient Shang capital. Not knowing their true significance, they often sold them as dragon bones to apothecaries, who would grind them up for use in traditional Chinese medicine. It wasn't until 1899 that a scholar, Wang Yirong, recognized the ancient script on a bone he'd purchased for its supposed medicinal properties, and the true historical treasure trove of oracle bone script began to be understood. Thank goodness someone spotted them before they all ended up as ancient tomes. These early writings are incredibly precious. They offer a direct window into the concerns, beliefs, and daily life of a civilization that existed over 3,000 years ago. You're looking at the direct ancestors of the characters used today, a continuous written tradition that is truly unique in the world. Deciphering them is like trying to understand the earliest emojis of a lost civilization. Only, these emojis could decide the fate of an army. You might see a character that looks like a person carrying a heavy load. Perhaps it's part of a question about a corvée labor project. Another might depict a chariot, crucial for warfare. Of course, historians still argue whether these early scratchings were purely divinatory or also served as a nascent form of record-keeping for the Shang court beyond ritualistic purposes. Were there other, more perishable materials like bamboo or wood that held more mundane records now lost to time? It's a tantalizing question. But what's clear is that even in these very first systemic uses of writing, there's a sense of profound seriousness, a connection to the spiritual, and an inherent understanding of the power of the mark. The act of incision itself, the careful carving into bone, was a deliberate, focused effort. There was no undo button, no backspace key. Every stroke was permanent, a testament to the gravity of communicating with the unseen world. And sometimes, you have to wonder if the oracles ever got asked about truly pressing matters, like, will my terrible new haircut ever grow out? Or, is that suspicious-looking neighbor actually a spy from a rival state, or just really into birdwatching? Probably not. But it's fun to imagine the royal diviner trying to interpret a crack pattern that vaguely suggests investing in a good hat. These ancient whispers, scratched onto bone and shell, are the bedrock upon which the vast, complex, and deeply philosophical art of Chinese calligraphy would eventually be built. You can already see the seeds, the reverence for the written word, the connection between the symbol and its meaning, and the careful, almost ritualistic act of creating that symbol. It's from these mystic scratches that a universe of artistic expression would slowly, carefully begin to bloom. You're not just looking at ancient writing, you're looking at the very DNA of an art form that would come to define a culture. Now, as you drift further back, past the crackling fires of the Shang diviners, you find yourself entering a world where bronze isn't just for tools or weapons, it's a medium for eternity, a canvas for the sacred. The Shang dynasty, as we saw, laid the groundwork with their oracle bones, but they, and especially their successors, the Zhou dynasty, roughly 1046 to 256 BCE, took the art of inscription to a new, more enduring level. You're no longer just scratching onto bone, you're casting characters into metal that could last for millennia. Imagine the scene: a massive, intricately decorated bronze vessel, perhaps a ding, a three-legged cauldron used for cooking ritual meals, or a zun, a wine vessel, gleaming in the filtered light of an ancestral temple. These weren't your everyday cooking pots or wine goblets, mind you. These were symbols of power, of lineage, of connection to the ancestors and the divine. The effort involved in creating one was immense. You'd need skilled miners to extract copper and tin, artisans to create complex clay molds, and a foundry capable of melting and pouring molten bronze at incredibly high temperatures. It was a statement, a testament to the wealth and authority of the ruling class. And what made these vessels even more significant were the inscriptions they often bore, known as Jinwen, literally metal script or bronze script. These texts, typically found on the inner surfaces of the vessels, weren't just labels saying King Wu's favorite soup pot. They were often commemorative, recording important events, military victories, land grants, royal decrees, honors bestowed upon officials, or even marriage contracts. You can almost feel the cool, heavy permanence of the bronze, the incised characters, a testament to events deemed worthy of being cast in metal for posterity. The mainstream historical fact here is the sheer variety and historical importance of these bronze inscriptions, which provide invaluable information about Zhou dynasty politics, society, and ritual. They are, in many ways, the history books of the era, just written in a much more durable and, frankly, more impressive format. The style of these bronze inscriptions evolved over the centuries. Early Shang examples were often simpler, sometimes just a clan emblem or the name of the ancestor to whom the vessel was dedicated. But as you move into the Zhou period, particularly the Western Zhou, 1046–771 BCE, the inscriptions become longer, more elaborate, and the characters themselves grow more regular and refined, though still retaining a certain archaic robustness. You can see a move towards a more structured and less purely pictographic form than the oracle bone script. The characters are often more rounded, thicker, and fill the space more evenly. There's a sense of gravity and solemnity to them, fitting for objects intended for solemn rituals and to be passed down through generations. Consider the process. The characters would first be written, likely with a stylus on a clay surface, to create the inner mold. This meant the calligrapher, or perhaps more accurately, the scribe designer, had to think in reverse, as the final characters would be in relief on the bronze. The act of writing itself was already becoming an art, requiring skill and foresight. The molten bronze would then flow into these meticulously prepared molds, capturing every stroke, every nuance of the inscribed characters. When the mold was broken away, there it was, language made tangible, enduring, and powerful. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some of these bronze vessels were buried with their owners, intended to serve them in the afterlife. Imagine archaeologists unearthing a tomb and finding not just skeletons and treasures, but these magnificent bronzes, their inscriptions silently telling stories of a world thousands of years gone. It's like receiving a message in a bottle, only the bottle is a half-ton bronze cauldron, and the message has outlasted empires. Some particularly long inscriptions, like that on the Mao Gongding, contain hundreds of characters, detailing political appointments and admonitions from the king, a veritable state document cast in bronze. You have to wonder if the official being honored ever thought, "Wow, that's a lot of bronze just to tell me to do my job properly." Probably not, but it's a testament to the weight these messages carried. The forms of the characters themselves are fascinating. You might see a character for horse that still clearly evokes the shape of a horse, but it's more stylized, more abstract than its oracle bone predecessor. The character for chariot becomes a more complex assembly of wheels and a carriage box. There's a sense of deliberate design, of aesthetic consideration, even within this highly ritualistic context. These weren't just functional symbols, they were part of the overall artistic and spiritual power of the vessel. The act of reading them, often in a dimly lit ancestral hall, would have been a solemn undertaking, connecting the reader to past glories and future obligations. Historians still argue whether the variations in bronze script from different regions and times reflect dialectal differences in spoken language, or simply evolving artistic conventions and scribal schools. It's a complex puzzle, piecing together linguistic and artistic history from these metallic messengers. Were casters in one region more flamboyant in their character flourishes than those in another? Did a particular workshop develop a house style that influenced others? These are the questions that keep researchers happily debating in academic journals. You can see the slow, steady march towards a more standardized and artistically conscious form of writing. The materials themselves, bone and then bronze, dictated certain characteristics. The sharp, incised lines of oracle bones gave way to the thicker, more molded forms of bronze script. But in both, there's an undeniable power, a sense of permanence. These weren't ephemeral jottings, they were communications meant to transcend time, to speak to ancestors, to gods, and to future generations. Think about the mindset. You are commissioning a bronze vessel. It's a massive undertaking. The inscription is not an afterthought. It's integral to its purpose. You want the words to be clear, dignified, and worthy of the gods and ancestors you are trying to appease or honor. This imbues the writing with a profound sense of responsibility. You can almost picture the scribe, his brow furrowed in concentration, carefully planning each character, knowing that his work would be immortalized in metal. No pressure, right? It's like being asked to design a tattoo for a deity. You'd want to get it absolutely perfect. This reverence for the written word, cast in enduring bronze, further solidifies the cultural importance of writing. It's not just a tool, it's a sacred act, a way of etching human concerns onto the fabric of eternity. These bronze vessels, with their sacred words, are like time capsules, carrying not just historical data, but the very spirit and aesthetic sensibilities of the Shang and Zhou people. You're witnessing the evolution of script from something primarily divinatory and starkly pictographic to something more narrative, more stylized, and deeply embedded in the rituals of power and remembrance. The weight of the bronze itself seems to lend a gravitas to the characters, a silent testament to their enduring significance. You're now propelled forward through time, leaving behind the weighty pronouncements cast in bronze, and you arrive at a pivotal moment, a period of upheaval, consolidation, and monumental change. The Zhou dynasty, whose elaborate bronzes we just admired, eventually fragmented. You find yourself in the Warring States period, 475–221 BCE, a chaotic era where numerous small states vied for supremacy. Imagine the confusion. Different states using different currencies, different weights and measures, and, crucially for our story, different variations of written script. Communication across state lines, already fraught with political tension, was further complicated by these linguistic discrepancies. It's like trying to assemble IKEA furniture using instructions written in 7 different, vaguely related dialects of hieroglyphics, frustrating and likely to end in something collapsing. Then, onto this fractured stage strides a figure of immense ambition and ruthless efficiency, Yingzheng, the king of Qin. Through brutal military campaigns and shrewd political maneuvering, he conquers his rivals one by one. By 221 BCE, he has unified China, declaring himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. And he wasn't a man for half measures. His vision was one of a centralized, standardized empire, and that extended to every facet of life, including the way people wrote. You can almost hear the imperial decree echoing across the newly unified land. Enough of this scribal free-for-all. We need one script to rule them all. This brings us to the mainstream historical fact of this section. Qin Shi Huang's imperial mandate for the unification of Chinese script. It was a monumental undertaking driven by the very practical need to administer a vast and diverse empire. Imagine trying to send tax decrees or military orders when your officials in a newly conquered territory are using a script variant that your central scribes can barely decipher. It was inefficient and ripe for misunderstanding, not something an emperor bent on absolute control would tolerate. So, the first emperor, with his prime minister Li Si, a key figure in this reform, set about creating a new standard, the small seal script, or Xiaozhuan. This wasn't an entirely new invention. It was largely based on the script already in use in the state of Qin, which had evolved from the earlier bronze scripts of the Western Zhou. But it was refined, regularized, and made more uniform. The characters in small seal script are elegant, slender, and highly symmetrical. They have a very deliberate, almost architectural quality. Each stroke is carefully considered, and the overall impression is one of order and precision, a perfect reflection of the emperor's desire for control. You can picture the imperial scribes hunched over bamboo slips or silk, meticulously practicing this new official script. There would have been primers and models issued from the capital, ensuring that everyone, from the highest minister to the lowest local clerk, was literally on the same page. This standardization was revolutionary. It facilitated communication, streamlined administration, and perhaps most importantly, fostered a sense of cultural unity across the newly forged empire. For the first time, there was a truly national script. Now, for a quirky tidbit, Qin Shi Huang was famously, or infamously, obsessed with immortality. He dispatched expeditions in search of the mythical Penglai mountain and the elixir of life, and he employed alchemists to concoct potions, many of which, containing mercury, probably hastened his demise rather than prolonging his life. A classic case of ancient wellness trends gone wrong. This obsession with permanence is intriguingly mirrored in his standardization efforts. While he sought personal immortality, he also, perhaps subconsciously, sought a kind of immortality for his empire through these unifying measures, like the script and, of course, the Great Wall. His standardized characters, like his tomb warriors, were meant to last. The small seal script is undeniably beautiful. The characters are more abstract than their bronze script ancestors, the pictographic elements often less immediately obvious, but they possess a graceful, flowing quality. Lines are of uniform thickness, and there's a strong emphasis on verticality and balance. Imagine trying to write this script. It demands immense control and precision. Each curve must be perfect, each line drawn with unwavering steadiness. There's no room for sloppy work when you're literally carving the emperor's words. This script was used for official documents, for inscriptions on stone steles commemorating imperial achievements, and on standardized weights and measures. It was the visual language of imperial power. Historians still argue whether the burning of books and burying of scholars incident, traditionally attributed to Qin Shi Huang, was as extensive or as focused on eliminating scriptural diversity, as later Han Dynasty accounts suggest. While it's clear the first emperor was no fan of dissenting intellectual traditions, especially Confucianism, which he saw as undermining his legalist principles, the exact nature and scale of this alleged purge are debated. Some scholars propose it was more about controlling historical narratives and consolidating ideological power than simply wiping out old scripts, especially since many books of the time were bamboo slips, and burying scholars alive sounds more like a dramatic flourish than practical policy. Perhaps it was an ancient cancel culture on an imperial scale. The impact of small seal script was profound. While it was eventually superseded by more practical scripts for everyday use, it remained a highly respected form for formal inscriptions, seals, which is why it's called seal script, and artistic purposes for centuries, even up to the present day. You'll still see it used in calligraphy and on official-looking chops or seals. It carries an aura of antiquity and authority. You can almost feel the immense pressure and the sheer willpower behind this unification. Think of the task: retraining scribes across a vast empire, many of whom would have been accustomed to their local script variations. It would have been like forcing everyone in Europe to suddenly write only in perfect standardized Latin, regardless of their native tongue. There would have been resistance, confusion, and probably a lot of grumbling from scribes who liked their old familiar characters. Back in my day, one can imagine an old scribe muttering, "Our character for river actually looked like a river, not this fancy new squiggle." But the emperor's decree was law, and so the diverse streams of Chinese writing, which had branched and meandered during the Warring States, were channeled back into a single, mighty river. This act of unification didn't just change how people wrote, it changed how they saw themselves and their place in the newly formed empire. The shared script became a powerful symbol of a shared identity. You're no longer just a person from Chu or Qi. You're a subject of the Qin, and you write like one. The elegance and order of small seal script stand in stark contrast to the brutality and upheaval that birthed it. It's a reminder that even in times of iron-fisted rule, beauty and precision can emerge. The empire's decree, etched in this newly unified script, laid a crucial foundation for the continued development of Chinese calligraphy, providing a common wellspring from which future styles would draw, even as they sought new forms of expression. It's a testament to the power of standardization, for better or worse, in shaping the course of a civilization's communication. You're now gliding out of the austere, rigidly controlled era of Qin Shi Huang and into a dynasty renowned for its stability, expansion, and cultural flourishing, the Han Dynasty, which ruled from 206 BCE to 220 CE. The small seal script, for all its elegance and imperial authority, had a drawback. It was pretty complex and time-consuming to write. Imagine trying to quickly jot down a shopping list or a memo to a colleague using those intricate, perfectly balanced characters. It would be like trying to write your grocery list in flawless, illuminated manuscript calligraphy. Beautiful, but hardly practical for remembering to buy onions. As the Han Empire grew, so did its bureaucracy. There was a need for a script that was faster to write, more efficient for the mountains of official documents, records, and correspondence that a large, functioning state generates. You can almost hear the weary sighs of Han Dynasty clerks, their wrists aching from painstakingly rendering small seal script, thinking, there has to be a better way. And indeed there was. This practical need led to the development and popularization of the clerical script, or Lishu, which literally means scribe's script or serf script, hinting at its more humble, utilitarian origins. The mainstream. Historical fact here is the emergence and widespread adoption of clerical script during the Han Dynasty, largely driven by administrative efficiency. It wasn't an overnight invention, but an evolution, likely starting as a simplified, more rapidly written version of seal script by lower-level functionaries. You can picture them, under pressure to process documents quickly, starting to straighten the rounded strokes, flatten the characters, and introduce a more varied line width, often with a distinctive widening or flare at the end of horizontal strokes, known as the Cantu Yanwei, or silkworm head and swallowtail. It's a wonderfully evocative name for a stylistic feature. This script was a game changer. It was significantly faster to write than small seal script, with its fewer strokes and more angular forms. Characters became wider and more squarish, a departure from the tall, slender profile of Xiaozhuan. The smooth, even lines of seal script gave way to a more dynamic interplay of thick and thin, a rhythm that hinted at the natural movements of the brush. For the first time, you really start to see the expressive potential of the brushstroke itself coming to the fore. It's less about perfectly uniform lines and more about the flow and energy of the writing. You're witnessing the birth of true calligraphic artistry, as distinct from mere legible writing. Imagine a Han official, perhaps stationed at a distant frontier garrison along the Silk Road. He needs to send a report back to the capital. Using clerical script on bamboo slips or newly available paper, another Han innovation we'll get to, he can communicate with a speed and efficiency unimaginable just a century or two earlier. This script wasn't just for grand imperial pronouncements on stone steles. It was for the everyday business of empire. Tax rolls, census data, legal documents, military dispatches, even personal letters, all flowed more easily thanks to Lishu. Now, for your quirky tidbit. One of the legendary figures associated with the creation, or at least the formalization of clerical script, is Cheng Miao. The story goes that Cheng Miao, a prison official during the Qin dynasty, offended Qin Shi Huang and was thrown into jail. To pass the 10 years he spent incarcerated, a rather long time for a minor offense, which makes you wonder what he really did. Maybe he suggested the emperor's new terracotta army was a bit extra. He supposedly reformed and simplified the existing script, creating some 3,000 characters in this new style from his prison cell. When he presented his work, the emperor was so impressed he pardoned him and even gave him a promotion. It's a great story of making the best of a bad situation, turning a prison sentence into a major contribution to literacy. Whether it's entirely true or a later embellishment, it highlights the perceived need for a more efficient script, even during the Qin dynasty. The aesthetic of clerical script is quite distinct. Those silkworm head and swallowtail strokes give it a characteristic undulating, wave-like rhythm. There's a sense of dignified grace, a mature and stable beauty. It's less overtly imposing than small seal script, but possesses a solid, grounded elegance. If small seal script was the emperor in his most formal court regalia, clerical script was the seasoned, respected minister, efficient and wise. Many important Han Dynasty steles, like the famous stele of Cao Quan Bei, showcase the beauty and refinement of mature clerical script. Studying these stone inscriptions, you can almost feel the chisel following the brushstrokes, capturing that unique Han elegance for eternity. Historians still argue about the precise timeline and the exact nature of the transition from seal script to clerical script. Was it a gradual evolution driven by many anonymous scribes, or were there key figures like Cheng Miao who played a more decisive role in its codification? And how much did regional variations persist before a more standardized lishu became dominant? The archaeological record, particularly inscribed bamboo and wooden slips found in tombs, provides crucial clues, but the full picture is still being pieced together. It's like tracking the evolution of a species through fossil records. There are clear lineages, but also missing links and ongoing debates about specific developmental paths. You can imagine the sense of liberation for scribes. The ability to write faster, to introduce a bit more personal flair, though still within established conventions, must have been exhilarating. This is where the potential for calligraphy as a personal art form, not just a means of recording information, really begins to blossom. The physical act of writing, the manipulation of the brush to create those characteristic thicks and thins, becomes a skill to be cultivated and admired. You're no longer just a transcriber, you're becoming a wielder of the brush, an artist of the line. The Han Dynasty also saw the formal canonization of Confucianism as the state orthodoxy. This emphasis on learning, scholarship, and moral cultivation further elevated the status of writing and literacy. A good, clear hand was the mark of an educated person. The ability to compose documents in elegant clerical script was an essential skill for anyone aspiring to a career in the Han bureaucracy. It's not a stretch to say that the administrative needs of the Han, coupled with its cultural embrace of scholarship, cemented the importance of good handwriting, paving the way for calligraphy to become one of China's most revered art forms. You can almost feel the hum of the Han Empire, a vast, complex machine run on ink and paper, on the efficient strokes of countless scribes, diligently penning reports, histories, poems, and philosophical treatises in this newly dominant script. It's a script that embodies a certain pragmatism, a down-to-earth elegance born from necessity, but blossoming into art. The Han's efficiency didn't just build an empire, it birthed a calligraphic grace that would influence all subsequent styles. You're witnessing writing becoming not just functional, but truly beautiful in its everyday application. Now that you've seen how scripts like small seal and clerical evolved, driven by imperial decree and bureaucratic necessity, let's pause for a moment and consider the very tools that brought these characters to life. You can't just conjure elegant calligraphy out of thin air, much as some legendary masters might have made it seem. The physical act of writing, especially in the East Asian tradition, is deeply intertwined with the materials used. And in China, these are not just tools. They are revered as the Wenfang Sibao, the four treasures of the study. These are the brush, the ink, the paper, and the inkstone. Understanding these four treasures is key to understanding the soul of the scholar and the essence of calligraphy. Imagine yourself stepping into the quiet sanctuary of a scholar's studio, perhaps during the Song dynasty, a period renowned for its refined aesthetics. The air is cool, with the faint, earthy scent of old books and fresh ink. Light filters softly through a paper window. On a polished wooden desk, you see them, the four treasures, arranged with an almost ritualistic care. These aren't just mundane objects. They are extensions of the scholar's mind and spirit, companions in the pursuit of knowledge and artistic expression. First, There's the brush, or bai. This is not your stiff, Western-style pen, or a flat painter's brush. The traditional Chinese calligraphy brush is a marvel of design. It typically consists of a bamboo or wooden handle, often beautifully lacquered or carved, and a brush head made of animal hair. The hairs are carefully selected and bundled to form a supple, tapered point. Different types of hair were used, each with its own properties. Soft goat hair for absorbent, flowing strokes. Stiffer wolf, actually weasel, hair for sharp, resilient lines, or rabbit hair for a fine, delicate touch. Often, brushes combine different hair types to achieve a perfect balance of softness and springiness. The mainstream historical fact here is the sophistication of Chinese brushmaking, an art form in itself, with renowned brushmakers whose names were as famous as those of the calligraphers who used their creations. Holding one of these brushes, you'd feel its balance, its potential. A good brush can hold a generous amount of ink and come to a very fine point, allowing for an incredible range of expression, from broad, powerful strokes to hairlines of exquisite delicacy. It responds to the slightest variation in pressure and movement from the calligrapher's hand. It's less a tool and more a sensitive dance partner. You don't just paint with it, you express through it. Next is the ink, or mo. This isn't the liquid ink you might buy in a bottle. Traditional Chinese ink comes in the form of a solid stick or cake. These ink sticks are made from soot, usually from burning pine resin, or tung oil, mixed with an animal glue binder and sometimes perfumes or medicinal herbs. The finest ink sticks were works of art themselves, often molded with intricate designs and gilded with gold. You might see landscapes, dragons, or poetic inscriptions adorning their surfaces. There's a whole connoisseurship around ink sticks, with collectors prizing antique examples for their unique qualities. To use it, you don't just dip your brush in. You take the ink stick and grind it with a little water on the third treasure, the inkstone, or yan. The inkstone is a flat, fine-grained stone, often slate or a similar material, with a shallow well or depression for holding water. The act of grinding the ink is itself a meditative process. You'd add a few drops of water to the inkstone, and then, with slow, circular motions, rub the inkstick against the stone. As you grind, the dried ink particles mix with the water, creating a rich, black liquid. The consistency can be controlled by the amount of water and grinding time, from a pale, watery grey to a deep, lustrous black. The sound of the inkstick moving across the stone, the gradual release of the ink's subtle fragrance. It's all part of the ritual of preparation, a moment to center the mind before the brush touches paper. And finally, there's the paper, or ji. While early writing was done on bamboo, wood, or silk, the invention of paper, traditionally credited to Kai Lun in the Han Dynasty around 105 CE, though archaeological evidence suggests earlier forms, revolutionized everything. The most prized paper for calligraphy and painting is xuanji, often called rice paper in the West, though it's typically made from the bark of the blue sandalwood tree or wing chelties, and sometimes rice straw. Xuan paper is known for its softness, absorbency, and durability. It can capture the subtlest nuances of the ink, from the sharpest black to the most delicate grey wash. It allows the ink to bleed and spread in controlled ways, creating beautiful effects that are integral to the aesthetic of Chinese calligraphy. Different types of Xuan paper exist, some more absorbent, some smoother, and calligraphers choose them based on the style and effect they wish to achieve. Here's your quirky tidbit. Inkstones, particularly antique ones from famous quarries, like Duan or Shi, were, and still are, highly prized collectibles, sometimes valued more than gold. Scholars would pass them down through generations, and some were even given poetic names. There are stories of scholars going to great lengths to acquire a particularly fine inkstone, believing it could improve their calligraphy or even bring good luck. It's like a musician cherishing a Stradivarius violin. The tool itself becomes imbued with history and a kind of mystique. Some were even buried with their owners, presumably so they could continue grinding ink and practicing calligraphy in the afterlife. You wouldn't want to face eternity with a subpar inkstone, would you? These four treasures are not independent entities. They work in concert. The quality of the brush affects how the ink is delivered. The ink's consistency, determined by the grinding on the inkstone, interacts with the paper's absorbency to create the final mark. It's a delicate ecosystem of materials, and the calligrapher must understand and master their interplay. You can't just pick up any old brush and expect to create art. You need to understand its hairs, its springiness. You can't just use any ink. You need to grind it to the right consistency for the paper you've chosen. Historians still argue about the exact moment and process by which these four specific items became formally recognized and universally revered as the four treasures. While each item has a long history of use, their elevation to this canonical status likely solidified over time, particularly as the scholar official class and the art of calligraphy gained increasing prominence. Was it a gradual consensus? Or were there specific influential texts or figures who cemented their collective title? It's a subtle point of cultural history. The profound significance of these tools lies in the respect and care they command. The scholar doesn't just use them, they cultivate a relationship with them, cleaning the brush meticulously after each use, storing the inkstick carefully to prevent cracking, treating the inkstone with reverence, selecting the paper with discernment. These are all part of the discipline. This care for the tools reflects a broader philosophical outlook, that the means are as important as the end, and that true artistry arises from a deep understanding and respect for one's materials. You can almost feel the cool smoothness of a well-used inkstone, the springy responsiveness of a good brush, the delicate texture of Xuan paper. These are the tangible elements that bridge the gap between the calligrapher's inner vision and the visible trace left on the page. They are far more than just implements. They are the scholar's soul-made manifest, the quiet collaborators in an ancient and deeply tranquil art. Without them, the philosophies we're exploring would remain purely abstract. With them, they become living, breathing strokes on paper. Having acquainted yourself with the four treasures, the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, you're now ready to delve into the very heart of calligraphic technique, the brushstroke itself. It's not enough to simply have the right tools. The true artistry lies in how you wield them. And in Chinese calligraphy, the foundation of all brushwork, the DNA of every character, can be distilled into a set of fundamental principles. You're about to encounter the 8 principles of Yong. Yongzi Ba Fa, Yongzi Ba Fa, a concept so central that mastering it is considered a gateway to understanding the entire art form. Imagine you are a young apprentice, nervously holding your brush for the first time. Your master, a figure of immense calm and profound skill, doesn't start you off with complex characters or flowing poems. Instead, they draw a single character, Yong, Yong, which means eternity or permanence. A fitting choice, given the enduring nature of these principles. They then explain that within this one, seemingly simple character, lie all the basic types of strokes needed to write any other Chinese character. It's like a complete workout regimen contained in a single, elegant exercise. The mainstream historical fact here is the codification of these 8 principles, often attributed to various masters over time, but famously discussed by figures, like the Tang Dynasty calligrapher Zhang Yanyuan in his Fashu Yaolu, Compendium of Calligraphy. While the exact origin is debated, their importance as a pedagogical tool became firmly established. These 8 strokes are Dian, Dian, a dot. But it's not just a simple speck. It has a head, belly, and pointed tail, often likened to a falling, rock, hang, hang, a horizontal stroke, ideally drawn with a slight upward arch like a taut silken thread. Shu, shu, a vertical stroke, executed with strength and straightness, like a sturdy pillar. Gu, gu, a hook, typically attached to the end of other strokes, sharp and decisive, like a hook catching a fish. Ti, ti, an upward flick or rising stroke, often moving from lower, left to upper right. Quick and light, like a grasshopper's leap. 1. 1. A curving or bending stroke, graceful and flowing like a willow branch in the wind. Though some interpretations substitute pie for this. Pie, a leftward falling, diagonal stroke starting thicker and tapering to a point, like an elephant's tusk. Na, a rightward falling diagonal stroke, starting thin, pressing down to become thicker, and then tapering to a point, often with that characteristic swallowtail flourish we saw in clerical script. Like the sweep of a broadsword. You can see how just this one character, Yong, conveniently contains all these fundamental movements. The dot at the top, the horizontal, the vertical with a hook, the upward flick, the left falling stroke, the short left falling stroke, often considered a variation of pie or a component of one, and the final strong right falling stroke. Practicing Yong over and over again, with meticulous attention to each of these 8 components, instills a deep understanding of brush mechanics. How to hold the brush, vertically, with a relaxed but firm grip. How to use the wrist and arm, how to apply pressure and how to control the ink flow. It's not just about mechanically reproducing shapes. Each stroke is thought to have its own energy, its own chi, or life force. The calligrapher isn't just drawing lines. They are channeling energy through the brush onto the paper. A dot isn't just a dot. It's a concentrated point of energy. A horizontal stroke isn't just a line. It's a gesture of balance and extension. You're trying to imbue each stroke with vitality, so it feels alive, not like a dead, inert mark. Think of it like a martial artist practicing forms. Each movement is precise, imbued with intention and power, even in slow motion. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some calligraphers have taken the 8 principles to almost mystical levels, associating each stroke with natural phenomena or even parts of the human body. The dot might be a pebble, the horizontal stroke a cloud stretching 1,000 miles, the vertical a dried vine, and so on. There are even theories linking the brushstrokes to principles of traditional Chinese medicine, with the flow of ink mirroring the flow of qi in the body's meridians. It's a holistic view where writing becomes a microcosm of the universe, and a well-formed character is a sign of a well-ordered mind and body. You might even say that a really bad stroke could give your calligraphy master a headache, literally. The lifeblood of these strokes lies in the concept of bishi, or brush power, potential, momentum. It's about the dynamic movement, the implied force, and the connection between strokes, even when they are not physically joined. A good calligrapher creates a sense of movement and rhythm across the entire character and the whole piece of writing. Strokes should feel like they are leading into one another, creating a continuous flow of energy. Even in the most static-looking regular script, there's an underlying dynamism. Historians still argue about the exact historical moment when the Yong character specifically became the preeminent model for teaching these 8 strokes. While the strokes themselves are fundamental and were undoubtedly taught in various ways, the mnemonic power of finding them all within this single, auspicious character, Yong for eternity, remember, likely cemented its pedagogical dominance over time. Was it one brilliant teacher's insight, or a gradual consensus among calligraphers? The specific aha moment is lost to us, but its enduring effectiveness is undeniable. You can imagine the discipline required, hours, days, even years spent practicing these fundamental strokes. The apprentice would fill page after page with just dots, just horizontals, just verticals, striving for that perfect balance of strength and grace, control and fluidity. It's a process that cultivates patience, focus, and an intimate understanding of the brush. It's like a musician endlessly practicing scales and arpeggios. They might seem tedious, but they are the building blocks of mastery. You have to get these right before you can even think about composing a symphony of characters. And it's not just about the shape of the stroke, but its internal structure, often referred to as bifa, or brush method. This includes how you initiate the stroke, the hidden tip technique, where the brush tip enters from an unexpected angle, to create a strong, centered line, or the exposed tip for a sharper entry. How you progress through the body of the stroke, maintaining even pressure or varying it subtly, and how you conclude the stroke, a clean lift, a sharp hook, or a gentle taper. These are the subtle details that differentiate a master's work from a novice's. It's the difference between a line that simply sits on the page and one that seems to vibrate with an inner life. You are learning that the brush is not a passive tool. It has a bone, the inner strength of the stroke, flesh, the ink that fills it, and muscle, the dynamic energy. A good stroke has all three in harmony. It sounds almost like you're building a tiny person with each mark. The pursuit of these eternal principles in the character Yong is a lifelong journey for many calligraphers. It's a constant refinement, a striving for that perfect expression of energy and form. The dancing brush, guided by these ancient rules, becomes an extension of the calligrapher's own breath and spirit. Having acquainted yourself with the four treasures, the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, you're now ready to delve into the very heart of calligraphic technique, the brush stroke itself. It's not enough to simply have the right tools. The true artistry lies in how you wield them. And in Chinese calligraphy, the foundation of all brushwork, the DNA of every character, can be distilled into a set of fundamental principles. You're about to encounter the 8 principles of Yong. Yongzi Ba Fa, Yongzi Ba Fa, a concept so central that mastering it is considered a gateway to understanding the entire art form. Imagine you are a young apprentice, nervously holding your brush for the first time. Your master, a figure of immense calm and profound skill, doesn't start you off with complex characters or flowing poems. Instead, they draw a single character, Yong, Yong, which means eternity or permanence. A fitting choice, given the enduring nature of these principles. They then explain that within this one, seemingly simple character, lie all the basic types of strokes needed to write any other Chinese character. It's like a complete workout regimen contained in a single, elegant exercise. The mainstream historical fact here is the codification of these 8 principles, often attributed to various masters over time, but famously discussed by figures like the Tang Dynasty calligrapher Zhang Yanyuan in his Fashu Yaolu, Compendium of Calligraphy. While the exact origin is debated, their importance as a pedagogical tool became firmly established. These 8 strokes are Dian, Dian, a dot. But it's not just a simple speck. It has a head, belly, and pointed tail, often likened to a falling, rock, hang, hang, a horizontal stroke, ideally drawn with a slight upward arch like a taut silken thread. Shu, shu, a vertical stroke, executed with strength and straightness, like a sturdy pillar. Gu, gu, a hook, typically attached to the end of other strokes, sharp and decisive, like a hook catching a fish. Ti, ti, an upward flick or rising stroke, often moving from lower, left to upper right. Quick and light, like a grasshopper's leap. One, a curving or bending stroke, graceful and flowing like a willow branch in the wind. Though some interpretations substitute pie for this. Pie, pie, a leftward falling, diagonal stroke starting thicker and tapering to a point, like an elephant's tusk. Na, na, a rightward falling diagonal stroke, starting thin, pressing down to become thicker, and then tapering to a point, often with that characteristic swallowtail flourish we saw in clerical script. Like the sweep of a broadsword. You can see how just this one character, Yong, conveniently contains all these fundamental movements. The dot at the top, the horizontal, the vertical with a hook, the upward flick, the left falling stroke, the short left falling stroke, often considered a variation of pie or a component of one, and the final strong right falling stroke. Practicing Yong over and over again, with meticulous attention to each of these 8 components, instills a deep understanding of brush mechanics. How to hold the brush, vertically, with a relaxed but firm grip. How to use the wrist and arm, how to apply pressure, and how to control the ink flow. It's not just about mechanically reproducing shapes. Each stroke is thought to have its own energy, its own chi, or life force. The calligrapher isn't just drawing lines. They are channeling energy through the brush onto the paper. A dot isn't just a dot. It's a concentrated point of energy. A horizontal stroke isn't just a line. It's a gesture of balance and extension. You're trying to imbue each stroke with vitality, so it feels alive, not like a dead, inert mark. Think of it like a martial artist practicing forms. Each movement is precise, imbued with intention and power, even in slow motion. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some calligraphers have taken the 8 principles to almost mystical levels, associating each stroke with natural phenomena or even parts of the human body. The dot might be a pebble, the horizontal stroke a cloud stretching 1,000 miles, the vertical a dried vine, and so on. There are even theories linking the brushstrokes to principles of traditional Chinese medicine, with the flow of ink mirroring the flow of qi in the body's meridians. It's a holistic view where writing becomes a microcosm of the universe, and a well-formed character is a sign of a well-ordered mind and body. You might even say that a really bad stroke could give your calligraphy master a headache, literally. The lifeblood of these strokes lies in the concept of bi-shi, or brush power, potential, momentum. It's about the dynamic movement, the implied force, and the connection between strokes, even when they are not physically joined. A good calligrapher creates a sense of movement and rhythm across the entire character and the whole piece of writing. Strokes should feel like they are leading into one another, creating a continuous flow of energy. Even in the most static-looking regular script, there's an underlying dynamism. Historians still argue about the exact historical moment when the Yong character specifically became the preeminent model for teaching these 8 strokes. While the strokes themselves are fundamental and were undoubtedly taught in various ways, the mnemonic power of finding them all within this single, auspicious character, Yong for eternity, remember, likely cemented its pedagogical dominance over time. Was it one brilliant teacher's insight, or a gradual consensus among calligraphers? The specific aha moment is lost to us, but its enduring effectiveness is undeniable. You can imagine the discipline required. Hours, days, even years spent practicing these fundamental strokes. The apprentice would fill page after page with just dots, just horizontals, just verticals, striving for that perfect balance of strength and grace, control and fluidity. It's a process that cultivates patience, focus, and an intimate understanding of the brush. It's like a musician endlessly practicing scales and arpeggios. They might seem tedious, but they are the building blocks of mastery. You have to get these right before you can even think about composing a symphony of characters. And it's not just about the shape of the stroke, but its internal structure, often referred to as bifa, or brush method. This includes how you initiate the stroke, the hidden tip technique, where the brush tip enters from an unexpected angle to create a strong centered line, or the exposed tip for a sharper entry. How you progress through the body of the stroke, maintaining even pressure or varying it subtly, and how you conclude the stroke, a clean lift, a sharp hook, or a gentle taper. These are the subtle details that differentiate a master's work from a novice's. It's the difference between a line that simply sits on the page and one that seems to vibrate with an inner life. You are learning that the brush is not a passive tool. It has a bone, the inner strength of the stroke, flesh, the ink that fills it, and muscle, the dynamic energy. A good stroke has all 3 in harmony. It sounds almost like you're building a tiny person with each mark. The pursuit of these eternal principles in the character Yong is a lifelong journey for many calligraphers. It's a constant refinement, a striving for that perfect expression of energy and form. The dancing brush, guided by these ancient rules, becomes an extension of the calligrapher's own breath and spirit. As your journey through the evolving forms of Chinese calligraphy continues, you begin to sense that there's more to this art than just skillful brushwork and aesthetic appeal. Beneath the surface of those elegant characters, a deep well of philosophical thought nourishes their roots. You're now venturing into the subtle yet profound influence of Taoism, or Taoism, on calligraphy, a philosophy that shapes its emphasis on naturalness, spontaneity, and the crucial concept of empty space. Imagine yourself not in a bustling city or an imperial court, but in a secluded mountain hermitage. Mist clings to the pine trees, a stream gurgles nearby, and the air is crisp and clean. Here, far from the clamour of worldly affairs, Taoist sages contemplated the Tao, the way, the underlying principle of the universe, the natural order of all things. Taoism, with its foundational texts like the Tao Te Ching, attributed to Laozi, and the Zhuangzi, emphasizes living in harmony with this natural flow, embracing simplicity, and recognizing the power of Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. How does this relate to black ink on white paper? Profoundly. The Taoist ideal of ziran, or naturalness, becomes a guiding principle for the calligrapher. You're not trying to force the brush or the ink to do your bidding through rigid control. Instead, you seek a harmonious interaction with your tools and materials. The way the brush hairs splay, the way the ink bleeds into the absorbent Xuan paper, the subtle variations in tone, these are not imperfections to be corrected, but expressions of the natural properties of the media. A truly great calligrapher, in the Taoist sense, allows the materials to speak, working with them rather than against them. Think of Wang Shiji and his Orchid Pavilion preface. That legendary spontaneity, that unrepeatable flow, is pure Taoist sensibility in action. He wasn't trying to create a masterpiece. He was simply allowing the moment, the inspiration, and his skill to converge naturally. This brings us to the mainstream historical fact that many of China's most celebrated calligraphers, especially those renowned for their cursive and semi-cursive scripts, were deeply influenced by Taoist thought. Figures like Wang Shiji himself, and later masters like Zhang Shu, and Huaisu of the Tang dynasty, famous for their wild, untrammeled cursive, often embodied this Taoist spirit of spontaneity and oneness with nature. Their calligraphy wasn't a product of painstaking intellectual construction alone. It was an outpouring of cultivated intuition, a dance with the Tao. Zhang Shu was even known as one of the 8 immortals of the wine cup, and stories abound of him creating his most astonishing calligraphy while thoroughly inebriated, his brush moving like a force of nature. Perhaps the wine just helped him get out of his own way, a very Taoist concept. Then there's the crucial Taoist concept of emptiness, or shu. In the Tao Te Ching, Laozi speaks of the utility of the void. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes which make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. This isn't just a philosophical musing, it's a direct aesthetic principle in calligraphy. The white space on the paper, the areas untouched by ink, are just as important as the characters themselves. This empty space, often called bubai, literally arranging the white, is not merely background, it's an active element in the composition. It gives the characters room to breathe, it creates balance and tension, and it guides the viewer's eye. You can almost feel the calligrapher considering not just where to place the ink, but where not to place it. The interplay between the black ink, the solid, the being, and the white paper, the void, the non-being, creates a dynamic harmony. A cluttered composition, with too little white space, feels suffocating and heavy. A well-composed piece, with carefully considered empty areas, feels open, alive, and full of potential. It's like the pauses in music, which are as vital to the rhythm and emotional impact as the notes themselves. Or, to use a less lofty analogy, it's like knowing when to stop talking Sometimes the silence says more. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Taoist-influenced calligraphers sought inspiration not just from quiet contemplation, but from observing natural phenomena in highly active ways. Zhang Shu, for example, was said to have gained insights into cursive script by watching sword dances performed by a famous female dancer, Lady Gongsun. He also reportedly observed porters jostling for position and even heard the clamor of street musicians, translating these dynamic energies into his brushwork. It's a wonderful image. The calligrapher finding the Tao not just in serene landscapes, but in the vibrant, chaotic flow of everyday life, then channeling that raw energy through the brush. It makes you wonder what calligraphy he'd produce after watching a particularly intense action movie. The concept of wu wei, effortless action, is also central. This doesn't mean laziness or lack of effort. Rather, it implies a state of such profound skill and attunement that the action flows naturally, without conscious striving or internal resistance. The calligrapher who has truly mastered their art doesn't have to think laboriously about each stroke, each turn of the brush. Through years of practice, the techniques become so ingrained that they are second nature. The mind is calm and focused, the body relaxed but alert, and the brush moves, as if guided by an unseen force. This is the ideal state for creating truly expressive calligraphy. You're not fighting the brush, you are the brush. Historians still argue about the precise degree to which early calligraphic theories were explicitly Taoist, or whether certain principles like naturalness and spontaneity were more general aesthetic ideals that later became strongly associated with Taoist interpretations. It's a chicken and egg situation. Did Taoism shape these calligraphic ideals? Or did calligraphers find in Taoism a philosophical language that perfectly articulated what they were already intuitively pursuing in their art? The truth likely lies in a complex interplay between the two. You can feel the Taoist influence in the appreciation for imperfections that reveal the natural process. A slightly skewed character, an unexpected blot of ink, a flying white stroke where the ink momentarily ran dry. These are not necessarily flaws. If they arise naturally from the dynamic process of creation, they can add to the vitality and authenticity of the work. It's the opposite of a sterile, machine-like perfection. It's the beauty of the gnarled pine tree, shaped by wind and weather, or the unique pattern of veins in a stone. So, as you look at a piece of calligraphy, particularly a fluid cursive or semi-cursive work, try to see beyond the characters as mere carriers of meaning. Look for the flow of energy, the chi, that animates the lines. Notice the breathing spaces, the eloquent voids that give shape and life to the inked forms. Feel the naturalness, the sense that the characters weren't painstakingly constructed, but rather grew organically on the page. You're not just seeing brushstrokes, you're witnessing the Tao in motion, the universe mirrored in a microcosm of ink and paper. The empty space isn't empty at all. It's full of potential, full of the way. While the flowing spontaneity of Taoism certainly carved its path through the landscape of Chinese calligraphy, another equally powerful philosophical current was shaping the art form, instilling it with a different set of virtues: order, discipline, and moral cultivation. You're now turning your gaze to Confucianism and how its ideals became deeply embedded in the practice and perception of calligraphy, transforming it into more than just an art, but a reflection of one's inner character. Imagine a more formal setting now, perhaps the hall of a government ministry or a respected academy during the Tang or Song dynasty. Here, the emphasis is not on wild, untrammeled expression, but on clarity, balance, and correctness. This is the realm where Confucian values, propriety, li, righteousness, yi, integrity, lian, and filial piety, xiao, provide the ethical framework for society and for individual conduct. And calligraphy, particularly, the clear and well-structured regular script, kaishu, came to be seen as a visual embodiment of these virtues. Confucius himself, who lived in the spring and autumn period, roughly 771 to 476 BCE, long before calligraphy blossomed into its major forms, emphasized the importance of learning, ritual, and self-cultivation as paths to becoming a junzi, a gentleman or superior person. For later Confucians, the act of practicing calligraphy became an integral part of this self-cultivation. The discipline required to master the brush, to form characters with precision and balance, was seen as a way to train the mind, to foster patience, and to develop a sense of order and harmony within oneself. You couldn't just be a slob in your personal life and expect to produce refined, dignified calligraphy. Or at least, that was the ideal. The mainstream historical fact here is the strong association between good calligraphy and good moral character, a belief that became deeply entrenched, especially from the Han Dynasty onwards, when Confucianism became state orthodoxy. A person's handwriting was often considered a window into their soul. Neat, well-formed characters were thought to reflect an orderly mind and a virtuous disposition. Conversely, sloppy or erratic handwriting might be seen as indicative of a flawed character or a lack of discipline. This belief had real-world consequences, particularly for those aspiring to government positions through the imperial examination system. An examiner might be swayed, consciously or unconsciously, by the quality of an applicant's calligraphy, seeing it as a sign of their fitness for office. It's like having your resume judged not just on content, but on whether you used Comic Sans dots. Think about the regular script, Kaishu, which was perfected in the Sui and Tang dynasties by masters like Wu Yangshun, Yan Zhenqing, and Liu Gongquan. This script is the epitome of clarity, balance, and structural integrity. Each stroke is deliberate, each character perfectly proportioned and self-contained, yet contributing to the harmony of the whole text. Practicing Kaishu is an exercise in precision and control. You must hold the brush correctly, maintain consistent pressure, and execute each of the 8 principles of Yong with unwavering accuracy. There's little room for flamboyant improvisation here. The emphasis is on achieving a kind of idealized, perfect form. Yan Zhenqing, in particular, is a towering figure whose calligraphy is often held up as a model of Confucian virtue. He was a loyal and upright minister during a turbulent period of the Tang dynasty, eventually dying a martyr's death at the hands of rebels. His calligraphy, especially his later works, is characterized by its strength, boldness, and a sense of unshakable integrity. His strokes are thick, powerful, and imbued with a profound sense of moral certitude. It's as if his unwavering character flowed directly through his brush. When you look at his calligraphy, you don't just see beautiful writing. You feel the presence of a man of great moral courage. His famous work, Draft of a Requiem to My Nephew, Ji Wengao, written in a raw, emotional semi-cursive after his nephew's death in battle, shows the cracks in the ore. Confucian stoicism, but the underlying strength is still palpable. Here's your quirky tidbit. There's a famous saying attributed to the Tang calligrapher Liu Gongquan. When Emperor Muzong asked him about the secret to good calligraphy, Liu supposedly replied, "If the heart is upright, the brush will be upright. Xin zheng zai bi zheng, xen zheng zai bi zheng." This pithy phrase perfectly encapsulates the Confucian link between moral character and calligraphic skill. It wasn't just about technique, it was about cultivating inner rectitude, which would naturally manifest in one's writing. Of course, one wonders if any corrupt officials with surprisingly neat handwriting ever made Liu Gongquan question his theory. Perhaps they were just very good at appearing upright. The process of learning calligraphy, in this Confucian context, was seen as a way to instill discipline and respect for tradition. Students would meticulously copy the works of past masters, internalizing their forms and techniques. This wasn't seen as stifling creativity, but as building a solid foundation. Only after mastering the rules could one hope to transcend them meaningfully. It's a bit like learning classical music. You spend years mastering the works of Bach and Mozart before you start composing your own symphonies, or indeed, breaking into jazz. Historians still argue about the extent to which the moral character, interpretation of calligraphy was a genuine reflection of the artist's inner state, or a culturally constructed ideal that calligraphers consciously or unconsciously aspired to project. Was good calligraphy always a sign of a good person? Or did people simply learn to produce the style of calligraphy associated with virtue? It's a fascinating question about the interplay between art, ethics, and social perception. No doubt, there were scoundrels with beautiful handwriting and virtuous souls with terrible scrawls, but the cultural ideal remained potent. You can see how this Confucian emphasis on order and moral cultivation would provide a counterbalance to the more freewheeling, individualistic tendencies that might be encouraged by Taoism. While Taoism might inspire the cursive master's wild, expressive outburst, Confucianism would guide the diligent student's patient practice of regular script, instilling a respect for structure and clarity. Both philosophies, in their own way, contributed to the richness and depth of the calligraphic tradition. Imagine the young scholar, day after day, grinding his ink, settling his mind, and carefully forming each character according to the established models. He's not just learning to write, he's engaging in a form of moral training. The focus, patience, and attention to detail required are all qualities valued in a Confucian gentleman and an effective administrator. The very act of creating something ordered and beautiful out of the fluid potential of ink and brush is a microcosm of the larger Confucian project of creating an ordered and harmonious society. So, when you observe a piece of perfectly executed regular script, with its balanced proportions and dignified strokes, remember that you're looking at more than just skillful writing. You're seeing the Confucian ideal of disciplined self-cultivation made visible, a testament to the belief that the order in one's ink can, and should, reflect the order in one's heart. You've explored the natural flow of Taoism and the structured virtue of Confucianism as they ripple through the art of calligraphy. Now, prepare to encounter a third major philosophical influence, one that brings a different kind of depth, a focus on meditative practice, and the potential for sudden, intuitive insight. Zen Buddhism, Chan in Chinese, from which the Japanese Zen is derived. As Buddhism journeyed from India to China along the Silk Road, it merged and mingled with existing Chinese thought, and its Zen school in particular found a profound resonance with the art of the brush. Imagine the atmosphere shifting once more. You're perhaps in a quiet monastery, the scent of incense faintly perfuming the air. There's a sense of profound stillness, but it's not an empty stillness. It's one pregnant with awareness. Zen Buddhism emphasizes direct experience, meditation, and the attainment of enlightenment, wu or satori in Japanese, not necessarily through a deep study of scriptures or elaborate rituals, but through a sudden intuitive understanding of one's own true nature and the nature of reality. And calligraphy, for many Zen practitioners, became a powerful tool for both expressing and cultivating this understanding. The mainstream historical fact here is the significant impact of Zen Buddhist monks and Zen-influenced lay practitioners on the development and appreciation of a particular style of calligraphy, often characterized by its spontaneity, simplicity, and profound depth. This is especially true from the Tang dynasty onwards, when Zen became a major force in Chinese religious and cultural life, and continued through the Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties, and indeed into Japan. Zen calligraphy, known as bokuseki, moji, literally ink traces, in Japanese, though the term is also used for Chinese Zen works, often seems to break free from conventional rules, valuing expressive power over technical perfection. You might see a Zen master brush a single character or a short enigmatic phrase, perhaps a line from a koan, a paradoxical riddle used in Zen practice to challenge logical thought and provoke insight, with incredible speed and force. The strokes might be rough, even ugly, by classical standards. The ink might be splashed, the lines uneven. But in that rawness, in that apparent lack of artifice, lies its power. It's seen as a direct transmission of the master's enlightened mind at that very moment of creation. It's not about something. It is something, a manifestation of Zen mind itself. Think of the Zen emphasis on mindfulness, on being fully present in the current moment. When a Zen calligrapher picks up the brush, the aim is often to clear the mind of all distracting thoughts, to be completely absorbed in the act of creation. The grinding of the ink, the preparation of the paper, the feel of the brush, all become part of a meditative practice. The moment the brush touches paper is a moment of pure presence. There's no room for hesitation, for second-guessing, for trying to create a beautiful piece. The stroke emerges from a place of stillness and spontaneity, a direct expression of the calligrapher's being. It's like that old Zen saying, when you walk, just walk. When you sit, just sit. Above all, don't wobble. When you brush, just brush. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Zen masters were famous for their unconventional calligraphic methods. The Tang dynasty monk Huaisu, whom we've met before in the context of wild cursive, and whose Taoist leanings often intertwined with his Buddhist practice, was said to have used his own hair or even plantain leaves to write when he couldn't find a brush. Another, the Japanese Zen master Hakuin Kaku, though from a later period he embodies the spirit, was known for his powerful, almost childlike calligraphy, often executed with thick, stubby brushes. These unconventional approaches weren't just for show. They were a way of breaking through ingrained habits and conventional notions of beauty, shocking the viewer, and perhaps the artist, into a more direct perception of reality. Imagine trying to explain that expense report for artisanal plantain leaf brushes to the monastery accountant. The Zen concept of mushin, wu-shin, or no mind, is crucial here. It doesn't mean an empty head or a lack of intelligence. Rather, it refers to a mind that is not preoccupied with itself, a mind free from the constant chatter of thoughts, emotions, and ego. When the calligrapher achieves a state of mushin, the brush moves without conscious contrivance, guided by intuition. The resulting work is seen as more authentic, more alive, because it flows directly from this unburdened state. It's a bit like an athlete being in the zone, where actions become effortless and perfectly timed without conscious thought. Historians still argue about the precise lines of demarcation between Taoist-influenced cursive and Zen calligraphy, as both often prize spontaneity and a break from rigid formalism. Indeed, many calligraphers, especially in later periods, drew inspiration from both traditions, and the philosophical underpinnings can sometimes blur. However, Zen calligraphy often carries a more overt emphasis on the expression of enlightened insight and the use of calligraphic practice as a direct path to, or manifestation of, that insight. While a Taoist might seek harmony with nature, a Zen practitioner seeks to awaken to their own Buddha nature. The brush becomes a tool for this awakening. You might encounter Enso, Yuan Xiang, the Zen circle, a popular subject in Zen calligraphy. Brushed in a single, swift, uninhibited stroke, the Enso can symbolize enlightenment, the void, the universe, or the perfect meditative state. It can be open or closed, perfectly round or charmingly irregular. The quality of the Enso is said to reveal the state of the artist's mind at the moment of creation. There's nowhere to hide in an Enso. It's a pure, direct expression. It's deceptively simple, just a circle. But to brush one with genuine Zen spirit is incredibly difficult. It requires that perfect balance of control and abandon. That state of mushin, the appreciation of Zen calligraphy, often requires a different kind of seeing. You're not necessarily looking for technical polish or adherence to the 8 principles of Yong in their most conventional sense. Instead, you're looking for the spirit of the work, the energy, the directness, the sense of a mind that has seen through illusion. It can be challenging for those accustomed to more refined styles, but it offers a profound beauty of its own, the beauty of authenticity, of a moment of pure being captured in ink. So as you contemplate the diverse world of Chinese calligraphy, remember this Zen dimension. See how the practice can be a form of meditation, a way to quiet the monkey mind and touch a deeper level of awareness. Feel the power in those seemingly rough or spontaneous strokes, the unbound energy that speaks of a mind liberated from convention. The Zen brush doesn't just write, it awakens. You've now journeyed through the foundational scripts, felt the embrace of the four treasures, and explored the profound philosophical currents of Taoism, Confucianism, and Zen Buddhism that flow beneath the surface of Chinese calligraphy. With this understanding, you're ready to meet some of the titans of this art form, the legendary masters whose brushstrokes have echoed through centuries, each leaving an indelible mark and shaping the stylistic currents of their time. We're about to take a whirlwind tour through various dynasties, encountering a few of these celebrated figures and their distinctive contributions. Our journey through masters rightly begins, as we've touched upon, with Wang Shiji, 303–361 of the Eastern Jin dynasty. Remembered as the sage of calligraphy, his Lantingji Shu, preface to the poems composed at the Orchid Pavilion, remains the undisputed apex of semi-cursive Xing Shu. His style is celebrated for its effortless grace, its perfect balance between structure and fluidity, and its natural, unforced elegance. You can almost feel the joyous, slightly wine-infused spontaneity of that famous literary gathering flowing through his brush. His influence was so immense that subsequent calligraphers for over 1,000 years studied and emulated his work, making him the benchmark against which all others were measured. It's like being the Beatles of calligraphy. Everyone knows your hits. Fast forward to the Tang dynasty, 618–907 CE, often considered the golden age of Chinese calligraphy, a period that produced a galaxy of brilliant talents. This is where regular script, Kaishu, reached its zenith. One of the four great masters of Tang Kai is Ouyang Shun, 557–641. His calligraphy is known for its rigorous structure, slender yet strong strokes, and a sense of almost perilous balance. His characters are tightly constructed, with sharp angles and an undeniable precision. Looking at his work, like the famous stele of the Jucheng Palace Sweet Spring, Juchenggongli Quanming, you get a sense of discipline and intellectual rigor. It's the calligraphy of a keen, analytical mind. Then there's Yan Zhenqing, 709–785, another of the Tang giants whom we met when discussing Confucian ideals. His regular script style is markedly different from Ouyang Shun's. Yan's characters are broad, powerful, and imbued with a sense of weighty dignity and moral rectitude. His strokes are often thick and robust, with less emphasis on delicate finesse, and more on raw, unshakable strength. His stele for the Yan family ancestral temple, Yan Shijia Miaobei, is a prime example of this majestic, imposing style. If Ouyang Shun is the precise architect, Yan Zhenqing is the steadfast general. His calligraphy just feels important, and you can't forget Liu Gongquan, 778–865, the third of these Tang Kaishu titans, famous for his heart-upright, brush-upright maxim. His style is often described as having Yan's sinews and Liu's bones, Yanjin Liu Gu, meaning it combined the strength of Yan Zhenqing with a more defined, bony structure. His characters are energetic and well-defined, with a springy tension. In the strokes, it's lean, athletic calligraphy. The mainstream historical fact is that these Tang masters of regular script established enduring models that became the standard for centuries. Their works were meticulously copied onto stone steles, and rubbings from these steles served as primers for generations of students learning to write. Even today, if you learn calligraphy in China, you'll almost certainly start by copying Ouyang Shun, Yan Zhenqing, or Liu Gongquan. Moving into the Song dynasty, 960–1279, a period renowned for its refined aesthetics and scholar officials who were often poets, painters, and calligraphers, the artistic emphasis shifted somewhat. While Tang masters perfected form, Song masters often sought greater personal expression and a more scholarly, literary flavor in their calligraphy. Su Shi, 1037–1101, also known as Su Dongpo, is a towering figure of this era, a brilliant poet, essayist, painter, and statesman. His calligraphy is prized for its naturalness, its playful spontaneity, and its rich, almost fleshy strokes. His famous cold food observance, Hanshi Tai, scroll, written in a flowing semi-cursive, is a masterpiece of personal expression, conveying deep emotion through the varied texture and rhythm of his brushwork. He once said his calligraphy was like marking in sand with an awl. There's a sense of earthy authenticity to it. Alongside Su Shi, you have Huang Tingzhen, 1045–1105, another of the four masters of the song. His calligraphy, particularly his semi-cursive and cursive scripts, is characterized by its long, sweeping strokes, unusual compositional choices, and a certain intellectual eccentricity. His characters often seem to lean and stretch, with dramatic contrasts between thick and thin lines. It's a highly distinctive and somewhat unconventional style, full of nervous energy. And Mi Fei, 1051–1107, the third great songmaster, the fourth being Caishang, was known for his almost obsessive study of past masters, particularly Wang Shiji, and his incredible technical virtuosity. He was also famous for his eccentric behavior and his passion for collecting art and inkstones. His calligraphy is dynamic, energetic, and often has a brush dancing quality, full of playful variations and a sense of effortless skill. He was a bit of a showman, but a brilliant one. Here's your quirky tidbit. Mi Fu was so particular about his tools that he was known to wash his inkstones with obsessive care, and he even gave them names and official ranks. He also famously bowed to a bizarrely shaped rock as his elder brother, an anecdote that perfectly captures his eccentric artistic sensibility and his Taoist-tinged reverence for natural forms. You can just imagine him having very serious conversations with his favorite inkstone. Inkstone Zhang, you've been slacking on the job today. Your ink isn't quite up to par. The Yuan dynasty, 1271–1368, established by Mongol rulers, saw a renewed interest in reviving classical traditions, particularly the elegance of Wang Shiji. Zhao Mengfu, 1254–1322, is the preeminent calligrapher of this era. A descendant of the Song imperial family who chose to serve the Yuan court, a controversial decision at the time, he was a master of many scripts, but especially known for his elegant and refined regular and semi-cursive scripts that consciously emulated the Jin and Tang masters. His work is characterized by its grace, fluidity, and technical perfection. He was incredibly influential in setting the tone for Yuan and later Ming calligraphy. Historians still argue about whether Zhao Mengfu's decision to serve the Mongol Yuan dynasty compromised his artistic integrity or, conversely, allowed him to preserve and transmit Chinese cultural traditions during a period of foreign rule. His calligraphy, with its emphasis on classical elegance, can be seen as a form of cultural continuity, but his political choices were complex. Later, in the Ming, 1368–1644, and Qing, 1644–1912 dynasties, you see a continued reverence for past masters, but also the emergence of individualist calligraphers who sought to break new ground. Figures like Dong Qichang, in the late Ming developed influential theories on art history and practice, while the 8 eccentrics of Yangzhou Baguai, in the Qing, like Zheng Xie, also known as Zheng Banqiao, created highly personal and unconventional styles, often combining calligraphy, painting, and poetry in innovative ways. Zheng Banqiao was famous for his bamboo leaf script, which looked well like bamboo leaves. This is, of course, just a tiny sampling. Each dynasty, each period, produced countless skilled calligraphers, each with their own nuances and contributions. You are seeing a living tradition, constantly evolving, with masters learning from the past while also pushing the boundaries of expression. Their ink traces are not just historical artifacts, they are vibrant conversations across time, a testament to the enduring power of the brush. You've walked with emperors and sages, witnessed the birth of scripts from oracle bones to wild cursive, and even peeked into the studios of legendary masters. But the tranquil art of Chinese calligraphy isn't confined solely to revered scrolls, locked away in museum vaults or the rarefied practice of scholar officials. Its ink has seeped into the very fabric of everyday life, adorning public spaces, marking personal identity and lending an artistic flourish to the mundane. You're now going to see how these everyday strokes keep calligraphy a living, breathing art form visible all around you if you know where to look. Imagine strolling through a bustling street in a Chinese city, whether ancient Chang'an or modern Beijing. Look up at the shop signs. Many of them, even today, are not printed in a soulless uniform font. Instead, they proudly display calligraphy, often specially commissioned, reflecting the character and prestige of the establishment. A traditional tea house might feature elegant, flowing script, suggesting refinement and tranquility. A robust, powerful script might adorn the sign of a martial arts school or a well-established bank. The mainstream historical fact is that shop signs, zhaopai, have historically been, and often still are, an important venue for calligraphic display, turning commercial streets into veritable public art galleries. The choice of calligrapher and style was a significant business decision, akin to modern branding. Then there are the seals, or chops, yinjiang. Remember how small seal script, xiaozhuan, got its name? These seals, carved from stone, jade, wood, or ivory, have been used for millennia in China as a mark of identity and authority, much like a signature in the West, but with far more artistic weight. Every individual of note, from emperors to artists to ordinary merchants, would have their own personal seal, often featuring their name carved in intricate seal script. Official documents were validated with imperial or governmental seals. Artists would stamp their seals on their paintings and calligraphy, not just as a signature, but as an integral part of the artwork's composition, adding a splash of vermilion ink that balances the black. The art of seal carving, zhuangke, is itself a highly respected discipline, a miniature form of calligraphy and sculpture combined. The carver must not only master the ancient script forms, but also understand how to arrange them harmoniously within the tiny space of the seal face, often working in reverse. The resulting imprint is a small, potent statement of identity. You can almost feel the satisfying thud of a well-carved seal being pressed onto a document, leaving its indelible mark. It's far more personal than just scribbling your name. And think about the challenge: carving those intricate seal script characters onto a tiny piece of stone, often with no undo button. One slip, and you've ruined it. It's high-stakes miniature art. Calligraphy also graces countless couplets, duilian, pasted on either side of doorways, especially during Chinese New Year. These are pairs of poetic lines, often expressing auspicious wishes for good fortune, health, and prosperity, brushed onto strips of red paper. As you walk through residential neighborhoods during the festive season, you'll see a vibrant display of different calligraphic styles, each household's doorway adorned with these ink-brushed hopes for the coming year. It's a deeply ingrained folk tradition that brings calligraphy right to everyone's doorstep. Even if you can't read the characters, you can appreciate the energy and artistry of the brushwork. Here's your quirky tidbit. In the past, and sometimes even today, professional letter writers would set up stalls in marketplaces. Many ordinary people were illiterate, so if they needed to send a letter to a relative in a distant village, or even just write a simple note, they would go to one of these scribes. These scribes often possessed a good hand in calligraphy, and for a small fee, they would not only transcribe the message, but also lend it an air of dignity and elegance through their brushwork. It's a poignant image, the emotions and practical needs of everyday folk being given beautiful form by a skilled hand. Imagine dictating a breakup letter and having it turned into a minor work of art, a very classy way to get dumped. Beyond these more obvious examples, calligraphy appears in countless other contexts. Think of inscriptions on monuments, temples, and memorial archways, paifang. These are not just informational plaques. They are often works of art by noted calligraphers, intended to inspire awe or contemplation. The names of mountains, scenic spots, and even individual pavilions and gardens are frequently brushed by famous hands and carved into stone or wood. It's as if the landscape itself is being signed by human artistry. Even on a smaller scale, consider items like decorated fans, which scholars often carried. These weren't just for keeping cool. They were canvases for painting and calligraphy, often exchanged as gifts among friends. A scholar might compose a poem and brush it onto a fan for a colleague. You'd have a portable piece of art imbued with personal sentiment. Or think of the inscriptions on inkstones themselves, or on teapots, or even on scholars' rocks, qi shi, those strangely shaped stones admired for their natural beauty. Calligraphy adds another layer of meaning and refinement to these objects. Historians still argue about the precise literacy rates in different periods of Chinese history, and thus the extent to which the average person could actually read and appreciate the textual content of the calligraphy that surrounded them. While the elite were certainly literate, for many commoners, the appreciation of public calligraphy might have been more focused on its aesthetic qualities, the power of the strokes, the balance of the composition, the prestige of a famous calligrapher's hand, rather than a deep understanding of the words themselves. However, certain auspicious characters or phrases would have been widely recognizable. You're seeing that calligraphy isn't just an elite pursuit, it's woven into the visual culture at many levels. It reinforces cultural values, conveys social status, and simply adds beauty to the environment. From the grandest imperial decree etched on a mountain to the humble New Year's couplet on a peasant's door, the brush has left its mark. It's a constant reminder of the power and beauty of the written word, a shared visual language that transcends mere communication. These everyday strokes ensure that calligraphy remains a vital and visible part of the cultural landscape. Not just a relic of the past. It's a tradition that continues to evolve, finding new ways to manifest in the modern world while still carrying the echoes of its ancient origins. You don't need to be in a museum. You can see it on the street corner, in a tea house, or on the seal of a letter. The art is all around you, a silent, inked conversation between past and present. You've seen how calligraphy permeated everyday life, from shop signs to personal seals. Now, let's delve deeper into a specific social sphere where this art form wasn't just an aesthetic adornment or a practical tool, but an absolute cornerstone of identity and advancement. The world of the Chinese scholar official, shidafu. For centuries, to be a scholar in China, and especially to aspire to a position in the imperial bureaucracy, meant that proficiency in calligraphy was not just desirable, it was indispensable. It was a fundamental part of what defined you. Imagine a young scholar, perhaps from a modest provincial family, having spent years, even decades, immersed in the Confucian classics. He's preparing for the imperial civil service examinations, a grueling series of tests that were the primary path to social mobility and a prestigious government career. These exams didn't just test knowledge of philosophy, history, and literature, they also, implicitly and sometimes explicitly, judged the candidate's calligraphic skill. A memorial to the throne, an essay on governance, or a poetic composition. All had to be presented in a clear, elegant, and appropriately formal hand. You could have the most brilliant ideas, but if your handwriting was a chaotic scrawl, your chances of success were slim. The mainstream historical fact here is the critical role of the imperial examination system, Keiju, established in the Sui dynasty and lasting until the early 20th century, in cementing calligraphy as an essential skill for the educated elite. Success in these exams was the gateway to power, influence, and social standing. And because all written submissions were, of course, handwritten, the quality of one's brushwork was constantly on display and under scrutiny. Good calligraphy was seen as evidence of good breeding, diligent study, and a cultivated mind. All qualities desired in a government official. You can picture the immense pressure. Examiners, often high-ranking officials and esteemed scholars themselves, would be reading thousands of exam papers. A neat, confident, and aesthetically pleasing hand would naturally make a better impression than one that was clumsy or difficult to decipher. It wasn't just about legibility, it was about projecting an image of competence and refinement. The brushstroke became a kind of visual rhetoric, subtly influencing the reader's perception of the writer's intellect and character. Remember, Liu Gongquan's, "If the heart is upright, the brush will be upright." That sentiment was very much alive in the examination halls. But why this intense focus on handwriting? It wasn't just arbitrary. In a pre-typewriter, pre-computer age, clear and accurate written communication was vital for the administration of a vast empire. Officials needed to draft edicts, reports, and legal documents that were unambiguous and easily read. Furthermore, the Confucian emphasis on self-cultivation, as we've discussed, saw the discipline of calligraphy as a means of fostering patience, precision, and an appreciation for order and harmony. All valuable traits for a bureaucrat. The scholar's path was one of holistic development, where intellectual prowess and artistic skill were expected to go hand in hand. The scholar official wasn't just a dry administrator. He was often also a poet, a painter, and a connoisseur of the arts. Calligraphy was a natural part of this constellation of scholarly pursuits, often referred to as the three perfections, sanhui, sanjue. Poetry, calligraphy, and painting. A truly accomplished scholar was expected to excel in all three, and these arts often cross-pollinated. A poem would be brushed in beautiful calligraphy, perhaps accompanied by a painting that captured its mood. The ability to appreciate and create such works was a hallmark of the cultured gentleman. You weren't just crunching numbers for the Ministry of Revenue. You were expected to be able to dash off an elegant couplet for a friend's birthday in a hand that didn't embarrass your ancestors. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some scholars became so renowned for their calligraphy that their handwritten notes, letters, or even casual jottings became highly sought-after collector's items, sometimes even more prized than their official pronouncements. Imagine a famous physicist today, and people are clamoring not just for his groundbreaking theories, but for the grocery lists he scribbled on napkins because his handwriting was just that good. It shows how deeply the aesthetic appreciation of calligraphy was ingrained. Su Shi's Cold Food Observance, a relatively personal piece, is a prime example of this. The inked character of a scholar official was, therefore, twofold. It referred to the literal characters they brushed onto paper, and it also referred to their moral character, their reputation, and their standing in society. The two were seen as inextricably linked. A scholar who cultivated his calligraphic skill was, in a sense, also cultivating his inner self, striving for that Confucian ideal of the Junzi. Historians still argue about the degree to which the examination system, with its emphasis on orthodox interpretations and calligraphic conformity, especially in later dynasties which sometimes favored a rather staid, uniform examination style, may have occasionally stifled true creativity and rewarded rote memorization over original thought. While it undoubtedly produced many highly capable and cultured officials, the pressure to conform could sometimes lead to a certain conservatism in both content and calligraphic style. Was it a perfect meritocracy, or did it sometimes favor style over substance? The debate continues. You can almost feel the weight of expectation on these aspiring scholar officials. Their future, their family's honor, and their chance to serve the empire all hinged, in part, on their ability to wield a brush with skill and grace. The study, Wenfang, with its four treasures, was their training ground, their sanctuary, and the place where they forged their inked character. It was here, through countless hours of practice, copying masters, and refining their own hand, that they prepared themselves not just for an exam, but for a life of scholarship and public service. The legacy of this tradition is profound. It created a class of administrators who were also artists and intellectuals, deeply versed in their cultural heritage. It ensured that calligraphy remained a central and highly valued art form for centuries, constantly practiced, discussed, and refined by some of the keenest minds in the empire. The scholar's path was literally paved with ink, each character a step in a journey of self-cultivation and societal contribution. You are witnessing how an art form became an essential qualification, a mark of distinction, and a profound expression of a civilization's highest ideals for its leaders and thinkers. You've journeyed from mythical origins to the scholar's studio, witnessing calligraphy's evolution through dynasties and philosophical embrace. Now, as we approach the modern era and our own time, you might wonder, in a world of keyboards, smartphones, and instant digital communication, what becomes of an art form so deeply rooted in the painstaking craft of brush and ink? Does it fade into obsolescence, a quaint relic of a bygone age? Or does it find new ways to flow, to adapt, and even to resonate globally? You're about to see how this ancient art of modern ink not only survives but continues to thrive and inspire, sending its echoes around the world. The 20th century brought immense upheaval to China. The fall of the Qing dynasty, decades of war, revolution, and profound social and political transformation. The imperial examination system, that great engine of calligraphic practice, was abolished in 1905. Traditional ways of life were challenged, and new cultural forms emerged. You might expect calligraphy, so closely tied to the old literati class, to have withered, and indeed, for a time, its prominence in official life and education diminished. But it didn't disappear, far from it. The mainstream historical fact is that despite the incredible changes of the 20th and 21st centuries, Chinese calligraphy has experienced remarkable resilience and even revitalization. It continues to be practiced by millions, from schoolchildren learning basic strokes to revered masters creating innovative works. It remains a potent symbol of Chinese cultural identity, a living link to a rich artistic and philosophical heritage. Major exhibitions of calligraphy draw large crowds, and works by contemporary masters command high prices at auction. It's not just nostalgia, it's a continuing artistic conversation. One way calligraphy has adapted is by embracing new contexts and new forms of expression. While traditional formats like scrolls and album leaves remain popular, contemporary calligraphers are also exploring installations, incorporating calligraphy into mixed media works, and even experimenting with digital representations. Some artists push the boundaries of legibility, moving towards a more abstract expressionism where the energy and movement of the brushstroke take precedence over the literal meaning of the characters. You might see calligraphy that resembles action painting, or works that deconstruct characters into their fundamental graphic elements. It's a testament to the inherent flexibility of the art form, its ability to absorb new influences without losing its core identity. Think about the global reach. As Chinese culture has become more accessible and influential worldwide, so too has its calligraphy. You can find calligraphy classes and exhibitions in cities from New York to Paris to Sydney. Artists from non-Chinese backgrounds are learning the techniques, drawn to its meditative qualities, its expressive potential, and its profound philosophical underpinnings. The principles of Chinese calligraphy, the balance of yin and yang, the importance of empty space, the flow of qi, have resonated with Western artists and designers, influencing movements like abstract expressionism and minimalist design. Remember Mark Tobey, the American painter whose white writing was directly inspired by his study of Asian calligraphy. He's just one example. Here's your quirky tidbit. There's a fascinating subgenre of performance calligraphy, where artists create huge characters on large sheets of paper or even on the ground, often using oversized brushes and buckets of ink, sometimes as part of public festivals or events. It's calligraphy as a dynamic, almost theatrical spectacle, emphasizing the physical energy and gestural freedom of the act. Imagine a calligrapher wielding a brush the size of a mop, dancing across the paper, creating characters several feet high in a matter of minutes. It's a long way from the quiet contemplation of the scholar's studio, but it shares that same core of energetic expression. It's calligraphy's rock concert moment. The digital age, surprisingly, has also offered new avenues. While keyboards might seem like the antithesis of the brush, there's a growing interest in calligraphic fonts for computers and digital devices. Designers create typefaces that emulate the style of famous calligraphers or capture the spirit of different scripts. There are even apps and drawing tablets that allow users to practice calligraphy digitally, mimicking the feel of brush and ink with surprising fidelity. It's not a replacement for the real thing, of course. You can't quite replicate the tactile sensation of Xuan paper or the subtle fragrance of freshly ground ink, but it makes the art form more accessible to a wider audience. Historians and art critics still debate the impact of modernization and globalization on the authenticity and future direction of Chinese calligraphy. Some worry that the traditional skills and deep cultural understanding are being diluted as the art form becomes more commercialized or adapted for a global market. Others see this evolution as a sign of vitality, arguing that calligraphy has always adapted to new social and technological contexts throughout its long history. Is a digitally created calligraphic font still calligraphy? Can an artist who doesn't read Chinese truly grasp the essence of the art? These are ongoing conversations in the world of modern ink. You can see how the core principles of calligraphy, balance, rhythm, energy, the interplay of line and space, possess a universal aesthetic appeal that transcends cultural boundaries. The meditative aspect of its practice also resonates in a fast-paced modern world, offering a path to mindfulness and creative expression. People are drawn to the idea of slowing down, of focusing on the simple yet profound act of making a mark with intention and awareness. Moreover, for people of Chinese heritage living around the world, calligraphy remains a powerful connection to their cultural roots. Practicing calligraphy, or simply appreciating it, can be a way of maintaining a link to ancestors, to a shared history, and to a rich artistic tradition. It's a visual language that speaks of identity and belonging. So, the ancient art of Chinese calligraphy is far from being a museum piece. It's a living, evolving tradition, constantly finding new ways to express itself and new audiences to engage. Its ink continues to flow, not just on paper scrolls, but across digital screens, in public performances, and in the hands of artists from diverse backgrounds around the globe. The tranquil art, with its hidden philosophies, still has much to say to our modern world, whispering its timeless truths about beauty, balance, and the enduring power of the human touch. And so, as our journey through the world of Chinese calligraphy gently draws to a close, you find yourself not at an end, but perhaps at a new beginning. A fresh appreciation for an art form that is as deep as it is beautiful. You've traced its origins from mystic scratches on oracle bones, witnessed the standardization under imperial decree, and felt the liberation of the cursive brush. You've peeked into the scholar's studio, understanding the reverence for the four treasures, and explored how the philosophies of Taoism, Confucianism, and Zen Buddhism infused each stroke with meaning and purpose. You've met some of its legendary masters and seen how their inked legacies continue to inspire. You've also seen how this ancient art breathes in the everyday, from shop signs to personal seals, and how it continues to flow and adapt in our modern, globalized world. The tranquil art of Chinese calligraphy, as you've discovered, is so much more than just pretty writing. It's a discipline, a meditation, a philosophy, and a profound expression of cultural identity. It's an art that demands patience, yet celebrates spontaneity. An art that is rooted in strict rules, yet allows for infinite personal variation. It's a conversation between the calligrapher and their materials, between the past and the present, between the visible mark and the invisible spirit. You can almost feel the lingering scent of ink, the subtle texture of Xuan paper beneath your fingertips, the focused energy of a mind centered on the brush. The mainstream historical fact that echoes through this entire journey is the unbroken lineage of Chinese calligraphy, a continuous tradition stretching back over 3 millennia. Few art forms in the world can claim such a long and uninterrupted history of practice, reverence, and evolution. This continuity is a testament to its enduring power and its deep cultural significance. It's a river of ink, constantly fed by new streams of creativity, yet always connected to its ancient source. Consider again the character Yong, meaning eternity, which contains the 8 fundamental principles. It's a fitting symbol for the art itself, timeless, enduring, and endlessly rich in its possibilities. Each time a calligrapher practices Yong, they are not just forming a character. They are connecting with that vast lineage, participating in a tradition that has been honed and cherished for generations. You are tapping into a collective wisdom, a shared understanding of beauty and expression. And what about the philosophies that lie hidden within those strokes? The Taoist embrace of naturalness, reminding you to flow with the way of things, to find beauty in imperfection, and to value the eloquent silence of empty space. The Confucian emphasis on order and self-cultivation, teaching you that discipline and moral rectitude can be reflected in the clarity and strength of your brushwork. The Zen pursuit of intuitive insight, showing you that the act of creation can be a path to mindfulness and a direct expression of your true nature. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are living principles embodied in the very practice of calligraphy. You don't just learn them, you feel them through the brush. Here's one last quirky tidbit for this journey. In some calligraphic traditions, particularly those influenced by Zen, there's an appreciation for what's called hitsuzetsu by Shi, literally brush tongue or eloquence of the brush. It's the idea that the brush itself can speak more profoundly than words, conveying subtleties of emotion and spirit that transcend mere verbal communication. A single stroke, a particular ink tone, the way a character is balanced, these can communicate volumes to the discerning eye, telling a story that goes beyond the literal meaning of the text. It's like your brush has its own secret language, whispering directly to the soul. Historians and practitioners continue to explore new ways to understand and categorize the vast spectrum of calligraphic works and their underlying aesthetics, recognizing that the interplay of technique, philosophy, and personal expression is infinitely complex. There's no single definitive interpretation of what makes a piece of calligraphy great. Its appreciation often involves a blend of intellectual understanding, aesthetic sensibility, and an almost intuitive feeling for the energy and spirit of the work. It's an art that invites lifelong learning and contemplation. As you settle deeper into your own quiet space, letting the images of dancing brushes and flowing ink soothe your mind, perhaps you can carry a little of that calligraphic tranquility with you. Think of the focused calm of the calligrapher, the harmonious balance between black ink and white space, the expressive power of a single well-placed stroke. There's a profound stillness at the heart of this art, a quietude that can be a welcome refuge in our often noisy and hectic world. The gentle rhythm of the brush, the slow grinding of the ink, the mindful attention to each mark. These are all invitations to slow down, to be present, and to appreciate the simple beauty of a line well drawn. You've seen that calligraphy is not just about an end product, a beautiful scroll to be admired. It's about the process, the journey of creation itself. It's about the cultivation of inner peace, the expression of personal spirit, and the connection to a rich and timeless tradition. It's an art that whispers of eternity, one graceful stroke at a time. Now, as the story of the brush and ink gently fades, allow your own mind to find its quiet center, the energy of those ancient characters, the focused calm of the masters, the deep philosophies woven into every stroke. Let them settle around you like a soft, comforting blanket. The world of intricate lines and expressive forms now gives way to the even softer landscape of your own approaching dreams. There's no need to hold on to any single image. Just let the feeling of tranquility remain, a gentle echo in the stillness of the night. The brush is at rest, the inkstone covered, the paper lies smooth and waiting for a new day. And you too can rest, drifting peacefully into the quiet space that awaits. The story is told, the journey for tonight is complete.